Hello and welcome to Creative Momentum with Meg Dunley. This is part of the first season of my podcast and it's called the Chateau season. Today I am interviewing, today features Sam Moe, a visual artist and writer from Massachusetts who now lives in Huntsville, Alabama. I met Sam at the Chateau residency in July 2025 and like all of these other interviews in this season, they were all done while I was at the Chateau and feature writers and artists from that time. I loved this chat with Sam. We were chatting in front of, if you want to watch the video on YouTube or on my Substack, you'll see this painting. We were chatting and she was sitting in front of this incredible painting that she was doing, which I just really loved, and it reminded me of some picture book that I had as a kid. I still can't put my finger on what that picture book is. If you know what that is, please drop a comment in wherever, and because I would love to know what it was that it reminded me of, something from the 70s. Anyway, when we were talking, she talks about how she creates her illustrations and paintings and writing using braiding. Braiding may be something that you've heard about before or maybe not. So braiding is something that she was intuitively doing, and then she discovered the name for it when she read something by a Colombian author, Ingrid Rojas Gonzalez, a book called The Man Who Could Move Clouds. I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. And it's about an indigenous Colombian basket weaver's approach to storytelling. So Sam alternates 3 or more stories in her works, whether that's through the columns in a painting, color schemes that alternate every few centimetres, or vignettes in her writing. Sam explores memory, trauma, and visual imagery. She draws heavily on speculative memoir and horror, genres that allow survivors to tell their stories without using precise language. During our conversation, she shares her incredibly disciplined daily writing practice. And how she has a collection of 91 journals dating back to when she was 12, and she also talks about her wisdom that she's gained about writing recklessly for yourself before considering an audience or market. Sam talks in the interview about how she has a book coming out in August. That was August 2025. I've got a link to that book in the show notes as well, because that is out now. And she's got 3 more coming out this year. She's prolific and hardworking. I really hope you enjoy this episode. I love chatting with Sam and getting to know her and seeing her powerful work at the Chateau. Enjoy. Hi Sam. Can you just begin by introducing yourself, who you are, your name, and where you're from?
Sure. I'm Sam Moe. I'm from, I live in Huntsville, Alabama, but I'm from Massachusetts originally.
Excellent. And tell me about what your creative discipline or disciplines are.
I'm a visual artist and a writer, so I illustrate and I paint and I write novels.
Excellent. Excellent. Can you tell me a little bit about your creative process?
Yeah, I've thought a lot about this over the years. I think I finally come at a method called braiding. I read The Man Who Could Move Clouds by Ingrid Rojas Contreras, and she talks about this indigenous basket weaver, and she's an indigenous Colombian woman, and her memoir is woven together like as if she was weaving a basket, and so you have these like vignettes that alternate every paragraph, and all her stories alternate, but they have a pattern. And I was like, I do that, but I don't know what to call it. But I write braided essays where you take 3 or more stories and then you alternate them like the braids in a hair, like on a person's head. And that sounds trivial, but when I'm painting, I do it in braids. And so the painting way above has like 3 separate columns because it's got 3 stories going on. And then when I was painting the one behind me, I was alternating. And so the color scheme, I would make sure I was doing it every other like couple of centimeters. And then when I'm writing, I do the same thing. I draw in a lot of memory and trauma, and then visual imagery, and then research. And that kind of goes into the painting too, because I do gastronomy research. And then I also represent myself with like my hands and my body. But also it's metaphorical, like one part of the painting has my face and there's an animal inside of it. And so there's also like a unreality element. But all of my creative writing has the same elements, fiction, nonfiction, and poetry.
Yeah. Where do you get your creative, or where or who or what inspires you for your creativity, basically?
That's such a good question. I do a lot of self-archival work. I have 91 journals that I've kept since I was 12. I also watch a lot of films about survivors, like a lot. I watch a lot of films about sexual violence and also horror, and then I read contemporary speculative memoir about those experiences. Shei Choa's The Story Game was a huge inspiration. Her memoir that is her interrogating how she got PTSD, but it's experimental, and so it's her playing a game with her sister, and her sister keeps being like, the story you're telling doesn't sound real. What really happened to you? And then she's like, I'm upset, but I don't know why. I'll tell you another version. And then they keep going until you find out like what's at the core of her trauma. And she read every Agatha Christie novel ever to write a memoir that's like a detective story. And so I started getting really into that genre, and the genre is called speculative memoir. And then I learned that there's speculative horror as well, and it's just people telling stories visually or textually about being survivors, but not using precise language. And I was like, oh my God, I can do that too. So that's why all my images have like disembodied hands and mouths and stuff, to sort of mirror that.
Yeah, and you've got something coming out soon?
I have a book coming out allegedly in August, and then I have 3 more in 2026.
Yeah, and will that just be in the US or?
Hopefully it'll be everywhere because all of them use Ingram Spark. Okay. I didn't realize. But my one that just came out is from the UK, but you can get that everywhere.
Yeah,
which is cool.
Excellent. We'll put links to that in.
Yeah, that would be so cool. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what your creative routine is.
Sure.
Do you have a routine?
Yeah. I write and I make art every single day. I make less art. The art is more triggering. But I write every day. If I'm at a residency, I usually write if I'm at a quieter residency, 10,000 words a day. But if I'm at school, I write usually 3 poems or 1 short story or 1 essay all in one go. So 3,000 to 4,000 words. And then I collect and edit those, and then I send them off to lit mags in bundles. And then they eventually become books. But I usually do it every day. And then on the weekends, when I have more time and I'm not at school, I write 8,000 words. I have to have a completed piece or I get nervous. So I have 1 completed essay, and then I decide, I'll write another. And they're each 4,000 words. And I write at school, and I write at my apartment at a desk. But I always pick up all of my stuff like some kind of weird pack animal, and I have to migrate it to every space. And when I'm done, I have to clean it all up so that nobody touches it, which I think has to do with growing up and not really being able to make art safely. So and then the next day when I go to a different desk, I just put it all out again. But it's just me transporting 30 books all around the apartment and outside, and it's really heavy.
Do you think they also work as touchstones for you when you're getting into your writing?
I do feel that way. I used them when I was doing job interviews. One of my mentors, she was telling me I should have objects around me that call forth like theory, so that when I get asked questions, I can look and be like, oh, I really love this scholar. Let me talk about them. So
I love that.
yeah.
I love that.
It was really, it helped a lot. I got a job, so.
Yeah, because I know a lot of writers do have, and artists do have, touchstones, but to be able to take that into the other kind of life as well. Like
for sure.
Professional life is fantastic. If you were to be having a chat with someone who is just like at the beginning of their creative journey, what piece of wisdom or pieces of wisdom would you want to impart on them?
Oh, I would tell them to do whatever they want. I was so lucky because I was not in a creative writing program at first, and so I was really reckless, and I wrote, I think, 10 novels, and they're all really chaotic and messy, but I didn't have anyone telling me what to do at that time. And then I decided I wanted to be a professional writer. And when I entered into my MFA program, it was really stifling and intense. And then I stopped writing after. And it's taken me like about 10 years to come back to doing what I want. But like a literary agent will tell you the same thing, that you write for yourself and not for the market, and that they don't want you to pick up in the next big trend, especially because it's going to take 2 years after signing with them to get your book on the shelf. And so it's more about, what do you have that's just you, that's different. And that's also what I've noticed the Man Booker Prize especially goes off of, is extreme uniqueness. And so like being yourself is actually like applauded, even though it doesn't feel that way because the literary community is very intense. But I would say don't listen to people. Write for yourself and don't write for your audience until you're about to sign with an agent.
I love that, and I think it's just actually one of the best pieces of advice to get people started. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you for your time.
Thank
you. I hope you watched that video so that you could see that beautiful painting. I'll also put a photo in the show notes of her with that painting. So, what really stood out for me in that episode, in that interview, was, her practice. And that she was already doing this braiding method before she knew what to call it. And it's interesting because I've had quite a few writers come through my retreats who are also trying to braid but didn't know what it was called. So braiding is just that weaving of multiple stories together across a bigger body of work. For some people who are doing memoir, it's weaving a bit of memoir through with a bit of non-fiction or fiction. And it's just a really beautiful way to create a body of work, whether that is words or painting, art. And I just love that moment. She really knew what inspired her. She's thought about it a great deal. And, just from reading that story of the Indigenous basket weaver, and thought, I'd do that, but I didn't know what to call it. Put your hand up if that has ever been you, where you're like, oh, that's what this thing I'm doing is called. It's all of us at some point have that realization that there's a name for what we're doing. So yeah, I loved that interview, and wow, how's that? 91 journals kept since she was 12. It's a great reminder about that power of documenting our lives as creative material and being able to dip back into them. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a shelf kind of behind me. That top shelf there has a lot of my journals from over the years, and I keep them so that I can dip back into them as well. When I'm traveling, I journal a lot more than when I'm not traveling, but I am making a practice, which I started last year, of just trying to write a little page each day at the end of the day, just to try and capture some of the essence of the day with a drawing and with words. I also loved her kind of talking about that discovery of speculative memoir as a genre that allows survivors to tell story through a detective kind of narrative, like experimental forms and the visual metaphors, rather than having to use the precise language, and how that opens up possibilities for work. with Sam, it's the disembodied hands and mouths, animals inside faces, that unreality woven through memoir. Her daily writing practice is remarkable, and it's a good reminder for all of us that we may have busy lives, but maybe we can be fitting in a bit more time for our writing. Maybe there is a spare half hour or even 20 minutes that you could squeeze in each day. And I love that incredibly valuable piece of advice that she gives us all about writing recklessly when you're starting out, and just produce chaotic, messy novels without anyone telling you what to do. And I loved her honesty about how entering a MFA program was stifling, and it took 10 years to come back to do what she really wanted to do. Just reminds us that sometimes formal training can constrain rather than liberate. Write for yourself, not markets or trends. And just trust yourself, and that being different is what makes our work worthy of attention. And this is our path to finding our own unique voice. I really loved that interview, and I hope you enjoyed it too. If you want to find out more about Sam and her work and her recently published book, and coming and being able to connect with her, you can find all of the details in the show notes. And of course, if you like this episode, please do like, share, subscribe, follow, and it just helps other creatives find their way into their own creativity. Before I go, I also just want to mention that I am running a free event this coming Sunday the 18th of January 2026. I'm calling it Set Your 2026 Intentions. I think that's what I've called it. There's a link to it in the show notes. It's free. It's at 10 a.m. Melbourne time, so which I think is GMT plus 11. We're just going to do some work to just help you work out how to create those intentions for your year and come up with some strategies on then carrying out those intentions. It's going to go for about an hour and a half. It's free. It's over Zoom. I'd love you to come if you want to kind of get a bit clearer on, maybe you started the work last year, thinking about what your goals are. Let's kind of bed it down a little bit more. Until next time, keep building your own creative momentum. See you later.